I'm Keith. I live in Kailua. So percentage of people that I actually reached by phone, it was about 10%. Well, those were very good calls. I've left messages for 25% of the people. 45%, 47% of mine did not have a phone number. Much more familiar calling the Ds. I kind of struck it like, hey, we're on the same side. We want the same things, and that was very true.
I wrote a script for myself for each one of the types of people, whether they were permanently on the list or they were not, and then a different one if I talked to them, and a different one if I was leaving a message, and a different one if I was sending a text message. So in general, I got a high percentage of leaving voicemail, a high percentage of no phone or out of service phone, and then I texted to the younger crew.
And I actually spoke with 6 people, which was about 17%. And I was quite surprised, actually. I think talking to Youngie and Gil, people were saying probably nobody will answer the phone, but I talked to several people. And one young person couldn't wait to get off the phone, but said he was definitely going to vote. And an older person, he was 88, and he had been actually stationed in Hawaii. So we actually had a bit of a conversation about Hawaii, which was kind of nice. And then about 38% didn't have a phone, or it wasn't working, or it was disconnected. So that was a little frustrating. So there I wasn't able to leave a message about who I was, and I hope you got the postcard, and just encouraging you to vote and like that, trying to be supportive. So it was kind of fun. Actually, it didn't take that long because there were a lot of people who didn't have a phone. But a couple people, one lady was so excited. She said, I haven't gotten my ballot yet, but I can't wait to vote. So that was kind of fun. That was kind of neat.
After the primaries on the 4th, we'll have a whole series of new information. So the postcards then can be a little more strategic, a little more targeted. Instead of just saying just to vote, you could say, hey, this information is here. Like, for instance, we only have 58% of the Arizona citizens that have filled out the census, right? So there's some information that'll be really important for you to share, and you become then the information source, and it'll be, something that will be important to them. So we are going to share that with you.
Well, I've done phone banking over the years, but every time when I'm about to do it, in the beginning, I just feel nervous and uncomfortable about making cold calls. But once you start, it gets easier. And it did help in the training to hear that, it's going to be about 10% that you actually talk to. That helped. Because then when you end up leaving voicemail and text, then you don't feel so bad. About a third no working number. And about half of them I left a voicemail or a text. And then there are 2 that I'd call refusals. Nobody really mean. One person did hang up partway through my little spiel, but, So all in all, pretty good.
Did you have anyone who called you back? So people you left messages for that actually got back in touch?
Yeah, I had a very pleasant call back where I called her and she was at work. It was 6 p.m. her time. And then I said, well, can I call back? And she says, I get off at 8. Because I told her right off the bat that, she was a Democrat. So I said, we're trying to get Democrats out to vote. And she said, yeah. And then I called her back a little after 8. And I assumed she might have been driving or something, but we had a very nice phone call.
Doris, what about you?
I got text back. Thank you for a young woman who I sent the Arizona ground game link because she said she was still doing research. And the other was the woman, 63-year-old woman who I had a long conversation to, or more like a long listen to, whose elderly parents she was trying to convince and talk to about who were who are Trump voters.
I wanted to know if anybody asked any questions that you felt you couldn't answer. And if you couldn't answer them, were you able to find the answers on the website?
Yes, and yes. So yes, there were some questions I couldn't answer. One of them, the notable one being, how do you convince your elderly parents who are conservative Christians and are pro-Trump? How do you convince them? So I told her what my thought was, just my opinion, which is that the issue of COVID was an issue that was on many people's mind and was where Trump was vulnerable. And that just that day I'd seen an interview with a previously independent voter in Arizona who had said she had elderly parents and they had existing conditions, and she was not going to vote for Trump again. So I just mentioned that example to her. The other thing was the whole thing with people that were Pebble voters. And I found that the Arizona ground game instructions were very useful. They were very specific about that, whereas if you went directly to the voter website, it was confusing how you did that. In the end, it really helped to go to Arizona ground game and look at your links. That was the most helpful thing. And even though I was trying to avoid doing the work, of doing that, in the end, it made me feel more secure that if somebody asked me, I could tell them better. So.
And did you, Keith?
So I found out where their closest, earliest voting site was and what the hours were. If you have a mail-in ballot, could you drop it off at that early site prior to voting day or not? That was unclear, but I had somebody, they said, I filled my ballot out, but I haven't mailed it yet. And I said, well, you really got to step on it because it has to reach them by August 4th. And they did not know that.
I was a little nervous about just the reaction of an out-of-state person calling. And of course, we took your word that would not be a bad thing. But no one seemed to be, in fact, they didn't even seem to take it in. Honestly, no one seemed to take in when I said I was calling from Hawaii. I don't know if it's that people don't hear the word Hawaii when we say it that way.
Personally, do like writing the postcards. The fact that you could specify, we talked about the census as well as, the election coming up. And I felt like that's good information to be getting across, and you can highlight and underline it and everything.
Wonderful. Well, I can't thank you guys enough. This is really good feedback for us. We just want to improve. What you're helping is not just us, but the other 200 volunteers that are on this project that also feel a little, just unsure of themselves.